Good morning. I'm happy to introduce Chimyo, and some of you have heard me say this like twice before, but I'll say it again for those who might be joining us for the first time today. Chimyo was ordained by Teijo in 2007 and received Dharma Transmission in 2015. She's trained at Great Tree Women's Zen Monastery, Temple, and also done Sotoshu training periods in Japan in 2010 and 2011, and also practiced at the Aichi Senmon Nisodo in Nagoya. In 2014, she did a practice period at Ryumonji, and she served as the head of practice at Great Tree. And she's volunteered with the sangha at Avery-Mitchell Correctional Institute until 2020. So thank you very much, Chimyo, for being here with us today, and we look forward to what you have to say.
Good morning.
Good morning.
And congratulations, we made it to the last day of the session. And, here's another lesson on change and on impermanence. It's always a wonder to me, where if I've been someplace and I've been there, and for example here at Hokyoji. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. You have to remind me. This is why I can't make it in New York. They say if you can make it there, you can make it everywhere. I can't make it in New York. I can't get loud enough. You can't get loud enough. You just get drowned. But what I was trying to say was, here's another, expression of change coming upon us and leaving Hokyoji here. And it's always a wonder to me that, I can be in a place for 3 weeks for such a long time, and some part of me kind of forgets the other, place, that I've been, the outside world, sort of. And it becomes this sort of, I don't know, strangeness that, or you get to see it a little bit for a few hours, a little bit differently, like that cultural, sort of culture shock coming from a different country, coming from this schedule and then going out into the world again where there's tons of schedules all over the place, and none of them, nobody told you about it. There's no thing on the wall, no chart on the wall. But I wanted to say that we're going to finish up with the eight realizations, but we're never finished with the 8 realizations. That's bogus. We are never finished with them. Part of what I wanted to talk about and what I really started writing about was the generosity part. And my intent as of last night was to go ahead and skip to the end, skip to the 8th. I think the generosity part is like in the 6th or the 7th. It doesn't even matter. But I think that's an important part of this. There's a reason why when they list those 6 paramitas, the 6 paramitas are, because I'm going to forget how they are, where did I put them in? Are dana, ethics, concentration, wisdom, patience, and effort. The first paramita that's listed is dana, generosity. And I think my take on it is the reason why it's listed first, and it's the first thing that's discussed when talking about the paramitas, is because it's the most obvious. It's the one that is sort of easy to visualize, not practice. It's easy to visualize, it's easy to mime. All I have to do is this, and you know what I'm talking about. But it's not really easy to do. It's no easier than any of the other sort of instructions that we're given as to how to live, whether it's from the paramitas or from the precepts or the Eightfold Path. They're easy to talk about. No, not really. They're sort of easy to talk about, and they're sort of easy to give examples of, but they're not easy to manifest in the true way. The practice of generosity is to freely and in a material way, in some cases, to give or let go of mine and see to the needs of others. What is hard to understand is that this is not a reciprocal exchange, but it's a self-soothing balm. It is healing and caring for this wound in myself that has rended, has torn away from the rest of the myriad things by my crazy mind, my delusional mind that insists on being separate. And it continues even through the gesture, even through the attempt, even through the effort to try to foil that coming together. I don't know if you understand what I'm talking about, but that's what came to my head. It's easy to give a handful of change or a piece of bread, but too often that gesture, that mime, is done with a closed heart. I am giving you something. I am doing something for you. And it never concedes to that fact that I'm giving nothing. I'm receiving as much as I am giving. That this connection is not closed when I do my bit and walk away. And this sutra talks a lot about giving, and it talks, but it's all very basic. I keep saying and I keep insisting that everything goes back to the Buddha and the first teaching. It's the thing that we can, can just not get into this thick head, It's all about the effort to attend to our greed, aversion, and delusion in a way that will bring us the liberation we say we want. But greed, hatred, and delusion are a real barrier if we cannot accept that the self that is suffering from this aversion and delusion exists in the way that we want it to exist, as this separate, special, permanent thing. And that's the point. That's the issue. That understanding of that. Can talk till I'm blue in the face, doesn't mean I, can respond to the world with that deep knowledge. And if I did, I would be meeting and fulfilling that vow to save, to free all beings. What did I write here on here? It said, this resistance to this little sutra book, to what it says, is it's like it's a nutshell, this bitter nutshell. And every day, rather than being able to crack it, I'm just licking at it. It's going to take me 1,000,000 years to get through that shell if I don't grasp it and hold it and crack it, with what strength I have. What did I write down here? It says that what was I talking about? It's simply the Eightfold Path in a sometimes bitter nutshell. And the secret is that to that cracking that shell is realizing that I is not I, that self and other is delusion, that what I give to the world and the myriad beings or the myriad beings, I give to this being here. I win nothing, and there's nothing lost. Impermanence and change are an indisputable fact, and I don't know why I'm trying to fight that. Okay, yeah, it sounds like what do you call it? That's what I was not wanting to read it. It sounds like a one of my silly journal entries or something. Whatever. Yeah. Because it always feels, when I get to this point, when I get to this sticking point for me, that I don't know what I'm talking about. And I don't feel, though I can confidently quote you and read to you from the sutras and know that this is what the Dharma is. I know that this is not fully in line or in balance with that. And there's some ego part of me that is really upset about that. And it's always scribbling silly stuff about it. So, and part of that is because here I am dressed like this. And, you know, some of you out here are dressed, you know, dress up this way in some way. And I don't want it to be dress up. You know, every morning we've done a bunch of bowing here. And my knees can attest to that. And we say the repentance verses, and the re-refuges, and the 4 vows, and the Heart Sutra. And I think I was trying to explain to somebody the other day, I don't know what context that was in, but when we do these ceremonies, not only are they very repetitive, they're not songs of praise, at least not often in Soto Zen do you have these sort of ceremonies where you're singing the praises of the Buddha or the praises of Dogen or whatever. I mean, there are a few in there. But in my experiences with Soto Zen ceremony, and I'm being specific because I don't know any other Zen in any deep way, we're talking the sutras. We're speaking the sutras every morning, afternoon, evening. We are talking Dogen. We are, you know, saying these words again and again. It's very repetitive. You know, we talk about. Maybe we're not talking. Maybe that's it. We're chanting about emptiness. We're chanting about all sentient beings. We are saying a vow every single time we do those repentance vows, and we do the 4 vows. You know, it's a basic thing. And one of the things, when I was, you know, at Great Tree, one of the things that would come up for me, you know, and when I had to be doshi or, you know, or not, when I'm sitting over there ringing the bells, you know, what would come to me is that, you know, this is a very bodily sort of thing going on here. I'm saying the vows, and it's a, you know, it's kind of a little bit of a dance, a little bit of exercise. For some of us, a whole lot of effort to get these bodies up and down, you know, in rhythm with those bells in the chant. It's bodily. It's a bow of submission, not to the statue in front of me, but to the myriad beings that I am vowing to save. And I think that's a little different. You know, I've not had a whole lot of experience with other religions either, so I may be wrong. But that's a little bit of the difference between Buddhist sotas and Buddhist ceremony and the other ceremonies, the few that I've had any kind of contact with, is that it's very direct. You know, It's not sending me somewhere else to find salvation. It's plopping me right down there on that mat with all sentient beings, vowing to do something that is impossible, vowing to be a bodhisattva, and first of all, understand all this and embody all this, and then save all beings, whatever that means. It's inviting me to go out there and not simply hand over some change, but to hand over all that I have mistakenly believed is mine. This body, this mind, this being that is absolutely resisting every bit of that. And that's why this is so hard. And that's why when I pick it up, there's so much no and a real effort to say yes and understand what I'm saying yes to, not in this head way, but in a full way that fulfills that vow. When I was working back in social services, I had a supervisor, and she was a nice woman, very smart. I had a lot of difficulties at one point in that job because I had a lot of overdues. And think the concept of overdue meaning that, the case, not that there should have been any kind of delay in getting people what they needed, but overdue in that I didn't have what I needed to fill out some freaking paperwork and check some box. And in my mind, because this person called me at the very last minute and said, "Oh, I can't get that to you today, I gotta do," or I gotta, whether it's an excuse or whether it's a real thing going on in their lives or whatever, I wouldn't close the case on time. The 30 days would come and I'd let it go over. Can you bring it next week? So I was the stupid worker, with a pile of overdues that I would have to go over. And of course, most of the time, those people would never bring that stuff in. And so they'd sit and I'd have a lot of overdues. And this worker, because this woman came in and, and complained or something. I don't even know what the complaint is. I didn't even see the woman. I probably didn't remember who she was talking about because her case had gone for 2 months overdue. And my supervisor said that I was not very compassionate because I was letting people's cases go overdue. Because in her mind, I wasn't doing my job fast enough, so, and there was, no matter how many times I explained it to her, I'm like, this is what, she just didn't get it in on time, whatever. And I remember being so angry at her. And it was neither right nor wrong. She was trying to do her job. I was doing my job in a way that didn't make freaking sense, you know. And the whole system made no damn sense whatsoever. Okay, so what am I going to be mad at? But I remember that the fact that she told me that I wasn't compassionate, and I wanted to say, yes, I am, but something stopped me, and I asked that question we've been asking. Is that so? Are you really? What's this about? You know, and still trying to come to grips with not, you know, being a great or a bad worker or a kind person or whatever, but what is this about? Where is my compassion? What does that mean? How is it really expressed? Not through, you know, some construct of social service or some job, but right here. How is my compassion manifesting, if I have any at all? Yeah. And these are the questions that the sutra is asking, is one of the questions that the sutra is asking, I think, of me. You know, and speaking of jobs, I was digging all over the place for this one quote, and now I've lost it again. But basically, it was from Dogen that was talking about, oh, here it is. You know, he, in his Shobogenzo Bodhisattva Shishobo, which is, that's a lovely thing to say, Bodhisattva Shishobo. If you're Japanese, please don't hit me. I know I didn't pronounce it right, and I'm not making fun, but it has a music to it. That, all right. In it he says, when we have learned well what the offering of alms mean, again, generosity, then we can see that accepting oneself and letting go of oneself are both offerings of alms. Earning a living and doing productive work have never been anything other than an offering of alms. Leaving flowers to float upon the wind and leaving birds to sing in their season will also be meritorious training and almsgiving. And that's Dogen when he makes me cry. He also makes me mad. But it's all through this practice. If you want to if you try to avoid the sutras and you just hang out with the patriarchs and Bodhidharma and Dogen and, you know, the guys, and hopefully one of these days we'll find the writings of the women. It's there, again and again and again. It's trying to be thrust into our heads, you know, again and again, that we are not separate, that this is something that when we do that gesture, you know, even with an empty hand, is it real? Is it true? Is it understanding that, you know, there is no, what's reaching is also receiving. You know, it's kind of, this translation has this modern flavor to it. I don't know if it recreates what Dogen is saying correctly or not, but, you know, you can see that accepting oneself and letting go of oneself are both offerings accepting, does not leave out this being. There's another, where did I put it? I'm sorry if this sound feels a little scattered, but this is Thich Nhat Hanh in his commentary again. When we no longer are separate from the universe, a completely harmonious existence with the universe is created. We see that all other human beings exist in us, and that we exist in all other human beings. We see that the past and future are contained in the present moment, and we can penetrate and be completely liberated from the cycle of birth and death. That is the liberation. This is what they're talking about. Why is it so hard? I might be talking too much, believe it or not. But just to share what I found, and what I'm talking about, because this concept of vow, is not just for people who are wearing robes. If you're in this room and you were in this room this morning, I hate to tell you this, but you signed a contract. Whether you are, intending to be a, Buddhist monk or anything, it has nothing to do with that. The contract is signed. This is what we do. And here's what Brother Hai says about vow. A vow in Buddhism is a deep, heartfelt aspiration and commitment that is quite different from a goal. A goal is something we think we'll achieve only in the future, whereas an aspiration is something that once we set our heart upon it, acts like two banks of a river that help direct the flow of water in each and every moment. This is our path. This is our flow to free all beings, including this one. A great vow in Mahayana Buddhism is the vow to transform all our suffering, and from the deep insight of interbeing and non-self, that is, you want to call it independent, whatever, independent, whatever, we want to put a big word on it, fine. It's fine. And non-self, be a benefit to all beings. We said that this morning. We say that every morning. We're sweating while we're saying, well, some of us are sweating while we're saying it. That's our exercise. That's our practice to do this. There's one other thing that I had found. I'm not going to go on too much longer. I'm sorry. Well, let me just read this and then I'll close out one. Not the best quote, but my teacher in Japan, Shundo Ayama, at the Nisodo, her books are not very popular here. They haven't been translated. Only one has been translated by Diane Benage, but she has many. Shundo Ayama Roshi says, if one is a Buddhist monk or priest, one must throw aside one's robes and become involved in the world in order to weep, suffer, and laugh with other people. Gradually, people will become aware of the true way and be drawn to it. That's almost exactly what this last realization is saying. It's not saying it in exactly those words, but the eighth realization is the awareness that the fire of birth and death is raging, causing endless suffering everywhere. We should take the great vow to help everyone, to suffer with everyone, and to guide all beings to the realm of great joy. All falls into a line, at least on paper. It needs to fall into a line here. So maybe I should stop, because somewhere, to be honest, in the last 2 days, I had this idea of what I was going to talk about, and then this sort of skittering went on to this last of the realizations. And note that it's not called rules. It's not called basics. It's not called fundamentals. It's called realizations. That's kind of an active word. It's realization. And the great beings that it's talking about are not some great heavenly beings or some historical beings, but the beings in this room, the bodhisattvas, mahasattvas in this room. With all that our intention, all our energy, and our hope to free ourselves, and with that, all beings. Simple, right? Right? So I'll stop so that there's time to for somebody to come tell me I'm wrong. Whatever, do whatever you want to do. But thank you very much for listening to me, and for, taking yet another journey with this little pamphlet. It's really interesting that we decided to do these 8 realizations, which is I have to say it's my favorite because it's important. Somehow it's important to me. Not my favorite, not the best written thing in the world, not even the most understandable to me, but it's been important to me. The next thing I have to talk about is the Tenzo Kyokun. I'm on somebody's list to do a talk about that. Again, one of my favorites. It's saying exactly the same thing. It's exactly the same thing. It's just Dogen this time. Dogen. So, yeah. But thank you very much. Please.
You said a couple of things. You hinted at issues with the status of women in Zen, and you mentioned you hinted at the issues with the. Oh, thank you.
I'm sorry. I've got something's going on because I think I've got an earache too from like Fukutopia. I'm sorry, but
you hinted at the issues with the status of women in Soto Zen, at least in Japan, and also you talked about Shundo Ayama, who has a reputation for shaking things up in Soto Zen and has apparently done a lot to improve the status of women. So I was hoping you could talk just a little bit about your experience with her.
My experience with her has been, in a sense, I feel like there's something I've missed. I went to her monastery, and she was very gracious, and she was very kind to me. But I couldn't speak the language. My direct experience with her is sitting with her and having tea. And, in Japan, what happens is, I don't know why this happens. I don't know if this happens to everybody. But the person will sit and they will talk. And, they're talking very, normally. And sometimes I don't have a translator. And they'll just sit and talk. And I'm just, not understanding a word, but you can feel the kindness and, that they're trying to make you feel welcome, make you feel comfortable. Had the same kind of experience with Dokan Saito Roshi. You said he was coming, right? Dokan Saito?
For the Katagiri thing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is he still going to come?
If they let him out of Japan.
Yeah. I had the same experience with him, standing in a alcove at Shogoji, and I was his doshi. I mean, not his doshi. He was the doshi, and I was the jisha. Where am I? And it was, we stood there, and he just talked about. I think he was talking about the weather, and he's pointing at the temperature gauge, whatever that was. It looked like a real old-fashioned thing. He was pointing at and explaining something, and they just talked to me, whatever. And that's kind of that. A couple of exchanges with her like that, and she would give lectures, public lectures, and lectures to the nuns, and I would just have to sit there and just watch, and listen to something I couldn't understand. So in a sense, I felt I missed something because I don't really know, I didn't really get to exchange with her, engage with her in a back and forth way. But at the same time, I did feel that sort of, she's very strong, she's very clear, There was no vacillation of anything about the Dharma. She was just right there, and she was with us, and she was very kind. So I wish I could say more about, and I had more of a relationship with her. But yeah, she's someone that I admire, even if it's a little from a distance and a little from a sort of not speaking Japanese point, kind of thing. But yeah, her books are available in all languages except for English.
Wow.
Just one. We only got one. She's got books that she's written over the years that are in German and French and all that. And I don't know why we haven't taken her up on it here, but maybe soon. Maybe sometime soon. And she's not the only woman, though. There are other women in Japan who we don't hear from. We hear a lot from the men, but we rarely hear from the women. And they're there. And they are writing, and they are scholars, and they are teachers. And it's a cultural thing, but I wish and I hope that we'll begin to reach out beyond what's just presented to us in the package that comes from Japan sometimes. Right.
I was struck by the metaphor of the banks holding the river as the path, especially because to me it's not quite how riverbanks work. That the river carves the banks and the banks hold the river in. The mutuality of it is really, really clear there. So I was wondering if you could talk about that mutual relationship. I mean, you have some, but just to keep talking about that, please.
I'm just going, what I was quoting was from Brother Fat Pie, and do I remember where it is actually in the book? Because it's only part of his quote. Yeah, that goes both ways, because though the river does cut through the land, but the land also has some pushback as to which way the river goes too. So there's this mutual thing, but I think what he's trying to say is that, in my brain, it comes out to the path of the river, as it goes through the land of our path through this Dharma, I don't know, I hadn't really thought about his metaphor that deeply, but I kind of get what he's going for with this, now I can't express it. Now I'm trying to fix his metaphor here now. But yeah, it is a kind of path that we're on here. It is the path. What does he say? And it acts like the two banks of a river that help direct the flow of water in each and every moment. It's just stop trying to fix it. Why am I trying to fix it? How we move in the world is guided by our vow, by our aspiration, by this effort that we're making to express the Dharma, to free all beings. That's all it is, really. Neither here nor there. But when we make this vow, it's the path. That's all it is. It's the path. And it doesn't constrict us in a way. I don't know that it's meant, well, in my mind, the riverbanks don't constrict you. It's just a way. It's just a way. A guide. I don't know. You have an idea about that? I mean, it's just, I don't know. Maybe it's a bad metaphor. I don't know. But it's again. But it's basically just the guide of the lay of the land that we decide to, how we decide to be is based on this vow, this Dharma of compassion and going past our delusion and all that. We can go on forever in this. But I'm sorry, I can't quite answer your question because I don't know that some part of that wasn't that important in terms of how he said it. I think I know what he means, but sorry.
Your answer was crystal clear. Thank you.
Anyone else? Please.
I've heard dana defined as relinquishment, and I really love that. That it's, and you said letting go, and the same kind of thing of just not just giving what might be easy to give, but excuse me, Dokai-san, for saying this, but what would have happened if Dokai saw somebody on the street after he bought that chocolate bar for 25 cents and given it to this other person? I mean, or half of it or something, but that kind of thing where it's just something that's meaningful to us that we're still willing to share. And oftentimes it seems like people with less give things to other people more freely than those with too much. And it just seems like the true generosity is in letting go, letting go and relinquishing, it seems like.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder what you think.
I think you've said it. I mean, it's just letting go and knowing that it's not this thing. It's not that this thing is going to keep me safe or better because I have it. It's just here, and it's doesn't. There's no need for it to belong to. A quarter is a quarter. Hunger is hunger, whether it's in my belly or somebody else's. And my hunger is not assuaged by my grasping onto something. It's from people giving to me, people making sure that I have something to eat. Even if it's just, a candy bar. And so if there's another being who's with me in that hunger, if I'm walking down the street, my candy bar that I just spent my last 25 cents on, and there's another being that's there hungry, and I just sit there and eat that whole candy bar looking at him, I'm still hungry. And it's more than hunger right in here. It's hunger in a whole being, because whatever made me sit there and look at someone else suffering while I, eat my candy bar is a hunger, is a fear, is never going to be assuaged, is never going to be healed. It's that, and it just tore me even more violently from the rest of all myriad beings, from the rest of this existence, from reality. If I can stand there and do that, if I can sit here and not feel any kind of compassion for anyone, I just feel like the feeling is of a tearing, me trying so hard to separate myself from everyone. It's almost a sort of, this is not going to make sense. It's like that tearing you feel when there's real grief, when someone dies, and you're watching them put them in the hole in the ground. We don't see it as that, but that's exactly what it is. That is a deep kind of hurtful, full of our aversion and delusion that just will not accept this. And so the suffering in us, even if we think we get what we want in that moment, that suffering just goes deeper. It goes deeper. I can put, Captain Kirk into space, but I can't feed the person down there, because what kind of grief is that where I can do something that silly? It's not completely silly, but that silly, and leave the rest of the world in suffering. That I can take my time and waste my time to do something and take, because it's really taking from me as well. I don't know. It's a whole bunch of stuff going on in my head, and mostly it's in my head. I'm sorry. Whatever. But I know what you mean. Anyone else?
And Doka-san, I wasn't meaning to say you bark and shake.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, if anybody was going to share that candy bar with.
Well, just about at the end, but.
Fukutoku has a...
Oh, okay. Go ahead, Fukutoku. Yeah, I didn't see your hand.
I was with the questions, but as you were just speaking, one of the things that came to mind that I'm really appreciating what you're saying, because the vow gives an alternative to what we hear so much from family or society or, all the, those other minor voices. So I don't know if that's an answer to these banks, but it just flashed in my head. Like, it does help me sort that out. Like, where should this flow of energy that I have, where should it be going? So I just wanted to share that.
Thank you.
Well, we're getting toward the end of our time. I thought I'd share just a little anecdote about the hardest thing I've ever given away. Was a little half bottle of mosquito repellent. I was in the Amazon on a little tour, me and the guide, and just this little canoe with a motor on it. And we were way in the backwaters, and the motor broke down. And we had to, so, this is a little bit of a panic for me. It's like, but he knew what to do, so we just stopped at this little village, way, off the beaten path, and they knew how to fix the motor. But while I was walking around, while the motor was being fixed, I put on some mosquito repellent, and this woman came up to me and saw my mosquito repellent. She was carrying a baby, and the baby was all bitten up mosquito bites, and she asked me, "Will you give me your mosquito repellent?" And I didn't have any more, and I was going to be in the Amazon for another 5 days. And that was about the hardest thing I ever gave away in my life. But that little baby was all bitten up with mosquito bites. And so it was just an interesting experience for me. But boy, did I struggle giving away that little tiny bottle of mosquito repellent.
Yeah, we'll see lots of things in ourselves, that come up when we come up against that first paramita. The last piece of cake. Oh well. But once it's gone, it's gone. And, it's not, and it becomes not so important. Horrible as mosquitoes are. You get through. So.
Well, thank you so much, Chimyo. It's been, people online maybe know we're concluding a 3-week practice period here. And Chimyo's been here the whole 3 weeks with us and offering her Dharma teachings. And we've just been so grateful to have her here. So we'll just close with a dedication of merit. Would you like to lead us in that, Genjo?
Well, can I just say just a little bit of gratitude, of words of gratitude to everyone, because this helps my practice too. This is a part of my vow to do this, but the reason why I'm doing this is because it is practice for me, and I get to hear, from all of these people, your wisdom and your intent. And it's very inspiring and very nourishing, because I've been kind of practicing alone here and there. Here and there I've had some opportunities to practice with other people. But, not, in different ways. And this has been a very nourishing, very very grateful for you inviting me. So thank you so much.